Good morning. How you guys doing today? What's up, guys? My name's Gus, and this is the Anomaly Podcast. Can you make sure you guys can hear me okay? Yeah, you guys can hear me okay? Good. Just turn some lights on and making sure, ooh, it's bright. Making sure you guys will be able to see me quite clearly. We're just getting started. I'm alone today, which is okay. Get it rocking one way or another. But yeah, so this week was a crazy week. I don't know if you guys been paying attention or living under a rock or something. Oh, I forgot to have that chair back there. Get rid of that. Just get it out the way so it's not a distraction. Of course. Still in the way. There we go. I'm at the bottom of the floor. Whatever. It is what it is. Okay. So it's been a nuts, crazy week. And it's like the world is ending in some capacity. I don't know what to talk about today. It's so much stuff. How are we supposed to keep up is the challenge, right? So so obviously there's a lot of stuff going on in LA, and just across the United States as it relates to these no king protests and what have you, which have basically gone on throughout the United States. According to some news sources, which I don't know how accurate this is, it's one of the largest protests in the United States. So I'm not sure about that, but I mean, hey, it's plausible. People are upset. They're not happy. They're not excited about what they're seeing, and they're taken to the streets. And apparently, there have been a decent number of protests across the United States that has been, arguably problematic. For some cities, and other cities, it sounds like it's been going fine. They've been peaceful protests and whatnot. So, I guess figuring out the rationale behind the protests, whether you agree or disagree, is interesting. I mean, it's good that as Americans, we have that ability, right? It's not any other. A lot of countries, we would not be able to have any of these protests, against the leader of the nation. So it's good that these protests are happening. It's not good when they turn into violence and stuff like that. There's arguments about whether or not the police or the National Guard or the enforcers of what's supposed to be peace are escalating. So there is some debate about that. But generally speaking, it sounds like most of them have been generally peaceful. If it's happening as in as many cities as is being claimed, then we're not hearing a ton of we're not hearing a ton about like a lot of violence breaking out. So that's good. So that's a good thing. So that's been going on. And then apparently, the United States was in talks with Iran about, some kind of a nuclear deal, most likely to prevent them from getting nuclear arms, which has been clearly a priority for the United States. And, a day or two after that, Israel basically attacks Iran. So I'm still not clear on what prompted that. I'm not really sure about what prompted that. That seems to be coming from Israel to Iran. So I don't know. I mean, they've been talking about Iran having, potentially access to nuclear arms or, enriching uranium and whatnot. But they've been talking about that for well over a decade. So I don't know if there was something different that happened that they felt the need to do that. So it's problematic because, Israel is sort of an island, amongst the Arab nations there. And, while they, I'm sure, could easily take out Iran with their military capabilities, essentially built on United States dollars and infrastructure, um, would they run into issues? Will Iran find more friends in that region due to this scenario? Because then other nations might have a concern about Israel, attacking them. Like, is Israel now the aggressor in the area, causing problems with the other Arab nations? And will they then, you know, start finding ways to become partners and then start a whole other shitstorm? Um, it doesn't help that we were there. Well, that Trump was there, supposedly for some kind of negotiation, and then Israel bombs them shortly after, and then you know uh, the president said that he didn't know that was going to happen, and then Netanyahu says that, oh, we knew the whole time, and it was our equipment that helped to make it happen, and the president's not really made any comment on that. So that's a little bit disconcerting. Regardless of what your position is on it, like, that should have been, there should at least have been some clarity as to, like, okay, are we in this? Are we not in this? Like, we should not. I don't think we should be getting into any kind of Middle Eastern war. I mean, we got enough problems dealing with Russia and China, and Korea is still a loose cannon. North Korea is a loose cannon. So we don't. I don't know what this is. This is really strange to me. So to have another front there seems highly problematic, especially considering there seemed to have been so much positive movement up until now. I mean, the president had, they negotiated, with Serbia, and just a number of other. Um, is it Serbia? No, I don't even remember the names of the countries, but had negotiated, some deals with a number of different Middle Eastern nations to, um, you know, I would imagine, to create sort of a peace, like peace deals. Like, this is what they were talking about, is what we've been hearing about. There have been criticisms against this because, people were like, oh, should we be doing that when they've been so aggressive in the past, and so on and so forth. And it seemed like things were going well. Like, the Arab nations were kind of getting together to help resolve the Gaza issue, to help rebuild Gaza. That was going to be, through the Arab nations and stuff. So I'm not really understanding this position that Netanyahu has taken, this aggressive issue. So I guess I need to learn more, because I don't understand. I'm trying to figure that out. And obviously, if we start getting involved in that, which it sounds like we might already have our hands dirty in that one, it's very plausible. That's just, I don't know. Are Americans going to be okay with that? I don't think Americans are going to be okay with that. Like, I'm not okay with that. I don't feel like, I don't hear other people like saying, yeah, let's go do that. I mean, this is crazy. So I'm trying to figure out what's happening. You know, I feel like no matter how much information I look up, I don't have the whole story. And that's very frustrating. And so many of the news sources are either disingenuous or just lying. They're just not telling the truth, or purposefully not sharing all of the information. And that makes it even more difficult because, the average person, and I would consider myself the average person, like, we got a whole life to live. We got bills to pay. We got work we got to do. Like, to have to parse through, internet information to try to find what the story is when there are supposed to be news stations doing this is very aggravating. That's the whole point of what news was designed for. News was, originally designed to provide information that was supposed to be factual, and someone took the time to look it up and do journalisting, journal journal journalism. Maybe that's the right way to say it. I'll try to figure out my English sometime in the next decade. All right, so yeah, so I just it's very aggravating, and it creates anxiety. We have our own economic challenges here in the United States with just tariffs are still kind of being a part of the conversation. Interest rates are still relatively high. Employment is showing low, but one thing that is really annoying about the unemployment numbers is, they changed the way that they check unemployment numbers. So I don't think that that's accurate. They're saying unemployment somewhere in the, like 4%, 5% range, but that can't be accurate because they're not counting people who stopped looking for work, right? People who just gave up. I don't believe that they're counting homeless either. They're counting people that are actively looking for work as opposed to all people not working, which I think those are two different numbers, two significantly different numbers. And we should be counting that. That seems like a smart idea to count that, to get an accurate number of how many people are working versus how many people have just said, I can't find anything. I've been trying for 2 years, 3 years, whatever, and I can't find work. So, and they're living in squalor somewhere. So I think it's important that we reevaluate that. It seems like that number is just kind of being adjusted for political purposes, which is kind of annoying to me. But so we have a lot of our own issues, so that we need to solve here. Immigration obviously is a challenge, as you can see with the protests that are happening, and both sides, they have a point. It's not like one side is right, one side is just wrong. On the one side of immigration, people should come here legally. Like we should have, like, if they're going to come here and take advantage of what prosperity they can get in this country, they should come through legal means. That's totally legitimate position to take. And if on the flip side of that, like, as a nation, we have the means to be able to provide opportunities for immigrants that are coming. We already know that Americans are not having enough children to replace themselves, so we're having a population issue. So then, if that's the case, then it makes sense for us to build a better system to get people into the country. For the people that are already in the country, it's tough to ask somebody to just like, hey, leave, and then we'll figure out a way for you to get back. It seems much more reasonable to try to figure out a way to just transition them into something. I don't know that path to citizenship is the way to go. Like I mean, I don't know all the different, I guess, proposals, but I mean, at least residency, right? You should at least be able to get some way to qualify for residency. And maybe there's a penalty that has to be paid for you, like a fine for having, come across the country illegally. Maybe there's a fine that has to be paid, but if you pay the fine and you go through whatever process is necessary to either maybe it's not even residency, maybe it's just to get a visa, right? You get a visa of some kind that permits you to work, and then by permitting you to work, you can maybe pay taxes or whatever the case may be. Now you're legally able to live in the country through the visa, and then from there you can build your case to become a resident, become a citizen, or whatever the case may be. Because that's a problem. I mean, we have a lot of immigrants here that are here illegally, and just kicking them out is not necessarily the right answer. I don't think that's the right answer either. It's a logistical problem, right? I mean, if you have the claim, I think is over 5 million, people came, I think, during just the Biden administration, and I don't know. I'm not even sure if that number may be like very conservative. I want to say it was like 5 to 7 million people came. And, if that's the case over 4 years, that let's say conservatively 5 million. Let's say that's been happening for the last, who knows, 2 decades, right? So every decade you have another 10 to 12 million people coming into the country. I mean, that's a lot of people to just move. Like, even though that would be considered a small part of the population, I mean, the logistical challenge of moving that many people out of the country, and even having to put that many agents out there to find those people in the first place to then move them out of the country forcefully. Mike, I mean, that's just a logistical nightmare. I mean, maybe it looks good for political purposes, but the cost of that has got to be astronomical. So it seems more cost effective to just identify a way to get people who came here illegally, instead of it being a cost to us, we find them, like maybe they get a fine, and they have a certain amount of time to pay that fine and then do some due diligence to get maybe a visa, right? And then, if they pay their fine and they get a visa, they can now, you know, uh, work towards getting residency. So maybe the visa is a temporary fix. They only get a visa for some period of time, and after that period of time, they either have to have either applied for residency or be whatever the case may be, right? At least maybe the application for residency, and then they have to go through that process or whatever. But I mean, that seems like that would be less of a logistical nightmare, and you would actually be able to generate some revenue from some of these, from the fines. If you're looking at, let's say you're looking at 20 million people and they each have $1,000 fine. I mean, is that $2 billion? No, that can't be right. 1,020 million times 1,000. I'm just throwing out random numbers, but like, let's say times 1,000. Yeah, 2 to the 10th power. How many zeros is that? Right? A billion is 9 zeros. So so is that 20 billion? You understand what I'm saying? Anyways, my point is that there's some revenue that can be, there's no cost other than having the process to do that. So there may be, I guess that's a cost, but it's not nearly as costly as like trying to, you know, uh, uh, get ICE agents into the field to try to find the one or two people that they find, a few hundred, even a few thousand people that they find from time to time, versus the millions of people that are here. I mean, that's going to be a never-ending process that'll never end. So it seems like it would be much more cost-effective to just figure out a way to find them for having come here illegally, and then there's an opportunity for them to find like access to like I said, like a visa to actually get in. And then those people who don't follow that protocol then use that's what you would use ICE for, right? To identify those people who are unwilling to go through that process. That seems like a much more effective and efficient way to do that. So I'm not sure. I mean, maybe that's not politically expedient. So that may be the reason why, right? That maybe Trump would lose his base if he did something like that. But it would certainly be much. I mean, if the idea is if if Republicans are really, if it's important for Republicans to be fiscally responsible, I mean, it sounds like that would be a little bit more fiscally responsible. Again, I'm throwing an idea out. I don't know what the actual cost would be, but I can't imagine that would be more expensive than the cost of the way that we're doing it now. So, anyways, it's a challenge, and we got to figure that out. And we have a lot of these kinds of things, and their cost of food is going up. AI is coming in and potentially threatening, jobs in the United States. We don't have the ability to, the idea of bringing jobs here is great if they're good jobs, but there's not a lot of jobs that we can afford to be competitive in. And, some of those are going to be like, car manufacturing and, you know, advanced manufacturing, any kind of advanced manufacturing, right? But a lot of these types of um, manufacturing industries are very automated already. They use robots. So it's not like, you need an army of people to run a car, like a car manufacturing plant. Like, you still need a decent number of people, but it's not thousands of people. It might be hundreds of people. So, like, yes, that would help, the hundreds of people who get hired. But if we have tens of thousands of people that are going to be unemployed, then mm, we're kind of at a loss here, right? We're missing out something. We're not filling the gap, and that seems like that's going to continue to be a problem. So we have to figure that out. And what is going to be the best way to do that is the question. Like, how do we solve for that problem? Because unemployment is going to continue to be a problem. Affordability is continuing to be a challenge. The housing market, for example, was seemed to have been threatened for quite some time. But the truth of the matter is, when you look at the data, there's nothing in the data that suggests the housing market is going to have this crazy crash that keep hearing the news kind of hyperbolically talk about, right? But we don't have all of the things that existed, for example, in the last crash, which was in 2006 to 2008, don't exist today. So there's not the same demand of people that are buying, or rather that are not buying. People are still buying homes. They're slow, right? Um, you got a bunch of people that have homes with really low interest rates and a ton of equity, and they're not necessarily in a bad place. So they're not moving because they have to. Before, they had to because they had bad mortgages, and the mortgages they couldn't afford anymore because they went from these interest only to these like full out crazy whatevers. And so there's all kinds of problems with the way the mortgage industry was handling it. So that that a lot of that stuff has changed. It's not the same at all. So what we're likely to see in the housing market is probably just going to stall for quite some time, and we'll probably see something similar in the commercial market as well. Now, in Florida, DeSantis had initially made a claim to um, remove property taxes from homesteaded homes, which I thought was a interesting idea. I thought that would be amazing. Certainly would spur on the housing market. But now that the bill is out, it seems like the bill is really not going to be including anything like that. Instead, it's going to be focused on um, removing the sales tax from tenants of buildings. So for business owners that lease buildings, the sales tax is going to go away. So, you know, I don't know how much of an impact that's going to have. So we'll have to see. Obviously, it will help the business owners, keep their businesses in place, generate more revenue, so on and so forth. I don't know that that's going to lower costs for the average American. The likelihood is that costs will stay the same, and those business owners will just keep that money, keep their profits as much as they can, because that's the point of having a business, is to have the highest profitability possible. It's not like you typically don't see business owners passing on savings like that to the public, primarily because if the market is still allowing them to sell a widget for $10, and then the widget goes up to $12 and people are still buying it at $12, even if they get a discount, but people are still buying at $12, why would they move it back down to 10? They might as well just keep it at 12 because people are still buying, and keep the extra $2. So, so I'm at a loss. I feel like I'm rarely at a loss for words, but I don't know what. There's a lot going on, and um, you know, it seems like no matter how much as I said before, how much I look into it, I feel like I'm missing information, and it's worrisome because what's happening right now. Obviously, Ukraine and Russia are duking it out, and that can turn into just a nut nut job of a war, which would not be great, specifically for Ukraine. But hopefully, Europe will likely get involved in that. They will probably ask us to get involved in that, which is not going to be pretty. Um, and then, Russia is a nuclear power, so we got to be real careful about, how we handle that arrangement. You know, I think that this whole business with Israel and Iran starting a war, I think that is highly problematic. Israel is not really in a, you know, there's a lot of debate about Israel's behavior. Israel has not been behaving in a way that I would consider, appropriate as it relates to what's happening in Gaza, as it relates to what they did with Iran, what they did with, just other aggression they've had in the region. They seem to be the aggressors, as opposed to like, oh, they're defending themselves, because that's the claim that they're making, is they're defending themselves, but they seem to be the aggressors here. So I am not excited about any partnership right now with Israel as it stands with the information that I have right now. I mean, maybe I'm just missing something, and that's very plausible. Um, from the information that I understand, it doesn't seem like they are justified in their aggression at this stage. So, if you have any information on that, I'd love to hear it, because I am not clear on like what their justification for being so aggressive to all of the other nations that are around them. And I understand they're in a place that, those other nations don't necessarily want them to be there, but I'm not familiar as of recent times of any aggressive actions that those nations have had against Israel to cause this reaction. So I think I need to do some more homework to understand this, because I am not understanding, and they seem to feel very justified in their position. So, so maybe I'm just not. I just haven't heard a good argument yet. That doesn't mean that a good argument isn't out there. I just haven't heard it. So I'll do some more homework on that and see what I can find out. There's a ton going on. It was really a lot to take in this week, and it's got me, somewhat anxious, because the last thing that the United States needs right now is to get into a war. I guess you could argue that that would generate more that could spur on our economy. So I guess you could argue. I guess you could make the argument, which was what happened with World War II, right? It spurred on our economy. Like the war machine actually spurred on our economy. So maybe that's the plan. The plan is to get the United States into a war so that we can spur on our economy and you know take better positioning in the rest of the world. I don't know, but I don't think that's the appropriate way to do it. Because it makes us the aggressor, and it could potentially have negative consequences in the future. But I guess that's potential, right? I guess you could have made that argument back in World War II, though that was during an actual war that we got involved in after the fact. So I don't know. We have to be real careful. War is just a terrible, terrible thing. I've not ever been in one. I've only seen remnants. I've seen people who have been in the battlefield and they're not okay. It's not it's not a I don't think it's a great option. So I hope that we can figure that out. So anyways, I don't want to go too far today. I don't have a ton to talk about. I just have general concerns. And I didn't get a chance to look deep into everything that's going on, and so I don't want to get into just speculation. So I'll do some more homework for next week and see what I can find out. I was just sort of it's just so much happening. It's hard to keep up with it all, and it's not like small stuff. It's all like huge, ginormous things, like things that are highly impactful. So anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. If you guys have any thoughts on anything that I've said, I'd love to hear your comments on it below. Please like, please share. I'd love to hear any comments you have. And if there's anything that you'd like me to chat about or talk about, with either Chris or anyone else, please let me know. I'd be happy to, invite any guests, or if you're interested in being a guest, to kind of talk shop about some of these things that are happening in the world. It's always a pleasure to chat with somebody who has some knowledge to share. So I appreciate your time. I thank you so much. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.